Motors on.
You are registered, ma'am?
Very good evening, delegates. Welcome to today's virtual CP meeting on audit documentation for corporates for the financial year 23-24. We have with us Aditya. Welcome, Aditya.
Thank you, sir.
We will start today's proceedings with the invocation of ICAI motor song. Thank you. We have with us Aditya. Aditya is a BCom graduate, practicing chartered accountant at Salem, handling multiple assignments relating to direct taxation, indirect taxes, company audit of all types of companies and other related assignments. His core strengths are have an incisive mind, constantly looking for more efficient ways to learn and equip in all spheres of professional work. A dedicated and friendly team player, a hardcore and committed professional with an in-depth analytical skills and timely delivery of assignments undertaken. He is having a rich experience of 5 years of post-qualification with RGN Price and Associates and RGN Price & Co. as a practicing chartered accountant in the following work areas. Statutory audit of trust and companies, internal audit of companies and government agencies and schemes, process study of manufacturing industries, state VAT audits of manufacturing and trading companies, end-to-end handling of corporate insolvency resolution assignments of listed companies in Chennai as prescribed by Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016, handling of accounting reform works of Southern Railways under a joint initiative of Indian Railways and ICAI in the project of transition of accounting system from the present cash or dual system to accrual accounting model. Stock and credit audit of major nationalized private as well as international banks, GST consultant for BPO and KPO companies in and around Chennai, and a circulation audit for nationwide newspaper agencies. He's also a visiting faculty on various laws relating subjects in renowned academics in Chennai. Apart from academics, he's interested in music and dance as well. He's a vivid tabla player, and he's also represented, he's also a tennis player, represented various inter-school tournaments. He's also a theater artist, part of international drama group. Really a multifaceted, young and energetic Aditya. We welcome you on behalf of CRCF ICA, and over to you, Aditya.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. So, good evening to one and all. Good evening to all the attendees. Good evening to all my fellow participants, fellow chartered accountants, or multifaceted people who are present over here. Today's topic, audit documentation for corporates, audit documentation for corporates for the upcoming year, that is financial year 23-24. On a macro level basis, to be on a frank basis, to be checking on what are the integral parts of audit documentation. So before we proceed on, first of all, I'm just opening my presentation. Just give me 1 minute, please. Hope the presentation is clear. Hope the presentation is clear to all.
Yeah, Aditya, you can proceed.
Thank you, sir. So starting off with the topic, before I proceed on to the topic, I would just give my pranams, my sincere thanks to our wonderful institute for the first for giving me an opportunity to present on the one of the major topics, on one of the integral topics that every chartered accountant should know, as well as anybody who any chartered accountant, budding chartered accountants, or whatever it is, whichever stage we are in, everybody should know about this. And of course, to my mentors, to my principal, to my family, and of course, not last but not the least, to my father, who is also a chartered accountant, who has made me to this level. So thank you all once again to who have made me this person to speak on this particular topic. So we all start with something called as an audit documentation. What do you mean by audit documentation? But before that, we need to understand if the particular audit procedure or whatever audit work, we do a lot of, we call ourselves auditors, we call ourselves chartered accountants. Typically, we call ourselves auditors. When we get into the society, we call ourselves as auditors. Chartered accountants, when it comes to tier 2 cities or tier 3 cities, many of us think that everybody, like persons like me, are called as an auditor rather than they are called as a chartered accountant. So when we start doing something called as an audit, what do we do, sir? We do a lot of documentation. We know about documentation, but when it is not documented, typically I would rather myself put myself in that particular example where I don't document few things because it's not happening on a formal basis over here. But in the tier 1 city like Chennai, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, etc., or even I should say even in the places like Coimbatore, workers or audits are on a particular streamlined way wherein everything goes by a typical document. So the first and foremost Taraka mantra, or the mantra that we need to understand, is if the work, whatever we do, it's not documented, it is typically, or it is equal to not done. Very simple. So why is this audit documentation important? First of all, what do you mean by audit documentation? What does our standard say? What does our own institute says in this? Audit documentation refers to the record of audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and conclusion the auditor obtains. So over here, so audit procedures performed. So whichever audit we are taking it, let's take up a statutory audit, let's take up internal audit, let's take up any type of audits that we are doing, due diligence, investigation assignments, first special assignments, whatever kind of the exercise that we are doing. First of all, what is the audit procedure that we are performing in the particular financial part? Let's doing creditors. Let's analyzing something called as creditors. So what are the analytical procedures, steps, let it be substantive, whatever it is, what is the procedure that we are performing over there? That is one thing. Second thing, relevant audit evidence obtained. Let it be, see, we are doing, I'm taking the same example. I'm taking up the process of creditors, analyzing the trade payables of a particular company. What is the best audit evidence that I can obtain? One of the major things is I can obtain something called as a confirmation. So that is one example of a relevant audit evidence. And conclusion, the auditor obtains. So what are the issues that we are obtaining? What are the issues that we are undergoing in doing a particular audit? So audit documentation refers to three parts. One is audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and conclusion, which an auditor arrives at. No, it can be the same, taking the same example. Let it be something called as a creditor. So when we are analyzing something called as a trade payables, sometimes we might compare what is given in the books of accounts versus what is provided in the confirmation. So that is one of our conclusion, which we will try to sort it out with the client and ask them for what is the difference, and we will try to match it up with whatever has been given. Suppose if there is a change, we'll make it a change. So conclusion, this particular aspect of what we are performing, obtaining an evidence, and as well as coming to a conclusion, as per SECSA 230, is called as audit documentation. So I repeat this point, 3 points: audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and conclusion which the auditor obtains from such procedures performing and obtaining of relevant audit evidence. SA 230 deals with the auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statements. So when I say to the next point, so SA 230 provides audit of financial statements. So when we are doing a financial statement audit, or when we are doing a due diligence audit or an investigation audit, wherever we are applying something called as an audit, we need to apply something, we need to take up procedures, or we need to apply standard of auditing 230, which provides about audit documentation. Let me move on to the next point. It is to be adopted as necessary in the circumstances when applied to audits of other historical financial information. The specific documentation requirement of other essays do not limit the application of this essay. Laws or regulations may establish other additional documentation requirements. So essay 230 might not be an exhaustive one, or it might not be an inclusive one. It does not say only this much is the documentation need to be performed. It differs from, in SA 230 has or depends its own scope with other laws and regulations or other standards of auditing also. So if a particular law, let's say we are doing an audit of an electricity company. So electricity company mandates certain disclosures under Electricity Act. Likewise, if you are doing for an insurance company, let's say we are taking a United India Insurance, National Insurance, Life Insurance, etc. So Life Insurance Corporation of India or Insurance Act, IRDAI Act provides certain other disclosures or certain other audits that needs to be done, or certain other conclusive evidence that we need to arrive at in arriving or in completion of the financial statements, in completion of the audit of financial statements. So SA 230 does not restrict itself to only those three things which I told you before. It might differ or it might vary based on the laws or regulations that we are trying to associate ourselves in the particular audit. Classic example would be banks, LFARs. So where we need to obtain a lot of audit evidence, lot of procedures we need to perform apart from what is provided in the Companies Act or apart from what is provided in the other typical traditional acts that we are generally performing. Second point. Third point. We move on to the next one. What is a basic assistance, or what is a basic objective? What are the usage of audit documentation? It assists in planning, performing, fixation of accountability and responsibility, supervision and review of audits, retaining the records for future audits, as also conduct of quality controls. So if a particular firm is subject to peer review, you know, I'm very sure that in the panel or in the attendees, I'm very sure a lot of peer reviewers are here. So they know much. They know how a particular audit documentation need to be maintained for a particular company in a particular firm. So when they are doing for a particular audit of a particular company or etc. So how they need to maintain over here, they need to know. So any audit documentation, it starts from the planning stage. So we are going to see, of course, another in a couple of minutes time, we are going to see what are the examples of a classic audit documentation that I have come through over the years of my practice as well as on my employment or after my qualification. So one of the classic things that we need to understand is audit documentation always assists in planning, performing and fixation of accountability. We need to understand, see, whenever we are preparing something called as an audit documentation typically does not involve only financial records or only financial evidences. It involves even a pre-eligibility, starting from pre-eligibility checklist till whatever we are, till we sign the financial statements. Even a financial statement is an audit evidence. Till we sign the financial statements, it is our audit documentation. Right from we plan something. For example, we have a team of around 7 members. So what are they going to do? That is also one of our audit documentation. And what is the delegation of authority that we are maintaining? Fixation of accountability and responsibility. So planning, what is the day to day, which from preparing schedules for audit. So likewise, let's understand that 1 month we are fixing up a particular audit. Within that 1 month, we need to complete that audit procedure. Means who's going to perform what and what is in what timelines it needs to get over. That is one thing. And supervision and review of audit. So when we are planning something, we all know we have a standard for planning. So when we are planning something, it goes through a documented level. I have on a classic example is whether we need to do a particular audit or not, that depends on audit documentation. How, sir? Because we are arriving at something called as a materiality check. We are doing something called as a materiality check. What materiality check, sir? Let's understand a particular firm is deciding that 1% of the total turnover, that is a materiality. Let's say if a particular company is doing 1 crore turnover, 1%. So any 1%, anything which is less than 1 lakh, we might not be able to do that. we might not be able to do the audit. So less than 1 lakh transactions, we might not be able to concentrate, and we will concentrate only on the gross transactions which are above 1 lakh. This is materiality which is fixed on a general level. Might be the firm might fix on a case-to-case basis or transaction basis. They might analyze that also. But here, on a general, I'm talking only on a general note. If the audit documentation, if the materiality documentation is on a particular, or they are fixing up on a particular trend, or if they are fixing up on a particular benchmark basis, that also provides a supervision and review, or enables for a supervision and review of this particular audit. And of course, and last but not the least, it enables for retention, as well as for retention of records, as well as retaining any audit evidence or any kind of findings for future assignments also. One of the classic audit documentation, what is a classic audit document that we need to understand over here? As per SA 230, it says an audit document is where a document which enables any other experienced or non-experienced auditor to able to understand the financials on a fair manner. So suppose till last year, one other auditor was doing a particular audit of a particular company. Now this year, that company is coming to me. They are due to this rotation thing. They are asking me to take up that audit, or asking my firm to take up that audit. Now I'm asking for audit documentation from the previous auditor. I'm obtaining the NOC, etc. We all know the procedures part. So as I see the documentation part, or as I see the documentation from the previous auditor, what they have done, I am able to easily understand what is the nature of the company, right from the nature of the company till what they have performed till the last minute of signing the financial statements. I am able to associate that. I'm able to easily understand that matter. This is where we need to understand audit documentation is the best, or is the classic, or is the benchmark of an audit document, is this particular criteria, wherein it enables next experienced or next any other auditor to be able to easily understand what has been done through the financials till last year. It includes evidence on auditor's basis. Evidence on the auditor's basis for a conclusion about the achievement of overall objectives of an auditor. What do you mean by overall objectives? One overall objective, one of the classic overall objective is obtaining a true and fair view of the financial statements. So any conclusion which gives me a comfort, or any evidence which gives me a classic comfort that I am providing a true and fair view of the financial statements, is the classic audit evidence that we are talking about, and that forms part of audit documentation. Suppose on after a few years, we are trying to understand what is audit documentation, what have we done for the particular audit. Let's say as particular scrutiny is coming through from ROC. Nowadays we see a lot of notices coming from ROC. We see a lot of notices coming from IT. We see a lot of notices coming from GST. So we all go through, when we see the audit evidence that we have done through, when we see the audit evidence that we are going through over here, so we understand that whatever evidence we obtain, whatever evidence we see, is on the conclusion, or on what basis we have obtained this particular conclusion that the true and fair view of the financial statements is our audit documentation. And next one is audit documentation also includes audit was planned and performed in essays, that is according to the standards of auditing and applicable and legal and regulatory framework. So suppose we understand, let's say we are doing a particular audit of sales turnover, sales from goods, or sales from revenue from sale of goods, or revenue from sale of services, etc. We are doing. On what basis we are able to arrive at a conclusion that the sales figure, whatever is provided over there, is perfect, or is it correct or not? Yes, we compare that with GST returns, we compare that with unbilled revenue ledgers, we compare that with the bills, we compare that with the physical records that we see, and everything we try to understand that yes, everything is fair enough. Likewise, if the company has whether defaulted in a liability, GST liability or not, how are we able to understand that, sir? We see their GST returns, we see their compliance calendars, we see their regular charts of how they have been filing their respective statutory returns, and we arrive at a comfort saying that we have provided a proper opinion on the as to whether it is true and fair view of the financial statements. And this particular legal and regulatory framework, compliance to legal and regulatory framework, is the one of the major nature of audit documentation which it provides to a comfort to a particular auditor. Major objectives. Again, the second aspect or second objective is just an extension of what we have seen on the nature. But the first objective is sufficient and appropriate record on the basis of the auditor's report. We certify or we provide that the financial statements of this particular company, let's say ABC Private Limited Company, provides a true and fair view of the financial position of the company. We are certifying like this, or we are providing our report like this. It is getting, let's say we are doing an audit of a listed company. Our report goes to all the members of the company. Let's say if there are 3,000 members, all the 3,000 members will get our independent auditor's report. On what basis we are giving, sir? On the basis of only of the audit documentation that we do. Sufficient and appropriate record of the basis of the auditor's report, whether it is a disclaimer opinion, whether it is an adverse opinion, whether it is a emphasis on the matters paragraph, or it is a qualified, unqualified, whatever type of audit report that we provide over here, the audit documentation serves as the base or serves as a backup for us, not any other thing over here. Second one, evidence that the audit was planned and performed according to standards of auditing and applicable legal and regulatory framework. It's not only according to standards of auditing or applicable legal and regulatory framework, it's also something which is even done on an internal basis. Like we provide, as I already told you on the classic example, that let's say we are supposed to complete an audit within 1 month, whether we have completed it or not. So on an internal basis also, whether the audit documentation reflects the completion of the completion of the assignment within the time frame or not. That is one thing. Second point, of course, an extension of the previous slide, which is whether it is in the compliance of standards of auditing. Whether we have completed 505, whether we have completed external confirmation standards, whether we have completed with the internal auditor standard, relying on the internal auditor's report, etc., whether we have completed with it or not. So we prepare a documentation of the entire set of procedures that we undergo. Of course, I'm going to tell you, or I'm going to share with you some exhaustive audit documentations that I have gone through over the years till now. Which I wished I should share it with you, so that you will have an exhaustive checklist which you can use it, or which you can incorporate it in your firm, so that it can enhance your audit procedures. And of course, at last but not the least, whether the company or whether the audit procedures have been on the line of what is provided in the statutory acts, legal and regulatory framework or not, whether it is as per Chartered Accountants Act, or whether it is as per GST Act, whether it is as per Companies Act, whether it is as per Income Tax Act, etc., whatever it is called as, whichever act which is applicable for a particular audit, whether the documentation is supporting towards that particular aspect of it. Audit documentation purpose: assisting the engagement team to plan and perform the audit. Assisting the engagement team to plan and perform the audit. So as I told you, when we say something called as an assistance, so audit documentation provides a schedule of how the audit is to perform, how the audit is to get planned, how the audit is to get what is the timeline for a particular audit assignment, functional audit, be it functional audit, be it management audit, be it whatever types of audit that we are doing over here. What is the time frame? What is the planning? Which resource needs to get engaged? Who is the reviewer, who is the manager, and at last, who is the person who is signing that particular document? It might not be signed. Let's say we are taking up internal audits. We are taking up internal audits of a private limited company who wants to get their books of accounts on a periodic basis. They want to get it internal audited. So might be signed, might there not be a sign. So suppose if we are performing that audit, even then, probably signing person might not be there. Even then, audit documentation is supposed to get followed as per this particular standard. And next one, assisting the members of the engagement team to direct and supervise audit work and discharge their review responsibilities. So right from, let's say, there is an audit team, let's say around seven members. We are doing a particular statutory audit. There might be a team of 7. On the above that, there might be 2 managers. On above that, there is a particular partner who is reviewing the entire workflow. So we need to understand assisting the members of the engagement team to direct and supervise the audit work. So the 2 managers will get this input from the audit documentation part, saying that how they are going to manage, how they are going to supervise, and how they are going to review, or how they are going to discharge their review responsibilities. Probably audit documentation can even state that on a weekly basis there should be a review, on a month, on a 15 days basis there should be a review, or on etc. Whatever periodicity they might fix, it is to be forming part of the audit documentation, or pre-audit documentation we can call it as. Enabling the engagement team to be accountable for its work. Very, very important, because every working paper will speak. Even let's say we are doing a particular audit of a trade payables. We are auditing a particular trade payables. Or let's keep it low. Let's take up something called as a unique, or let's take up a assignment called as a stock audit or bank stock audit. On what basis you will be able to certify this report, sir? On basis of your visit, your evidence that you have performed the audit over there. Generally, the bank stock audits will ask you to paste the photos and all those things. So what is the record that you have? Suppose if your stock and receivables audit, you are certifying that as on this day there is a particular aging of receivables over there. So how are you certifying it, sir? Based on the record that you are getting it from the management. Suppose in the same stock audit there are around 2 articles who are joining over there. So making the team, if they are preparing the report right from the start of the work till the completion of the work, if they are accountable, or if they are preparing the work, they are supposed to be accountable as well for this particular aspect. It's not that when it goes to the bank, only the auditor is to be responsible. Of course, the auditor is responsible. Auditor is the face of the over there. But when it comes to internal basis, every person who is preparing that document, or every person who is part of the documentation, is to be responsible for this particular work, or is to be accountable for this particular work. Next one, when it comes to the next point, retaining a record of matters of continuing significance to future audits. What do you mean by this, sir? Retaining a record of matters of continuing significance. Suppose, I don't want to name the company. It was around 5 years back when I was doing a PSC audit. Actually, it was not a typically a central. It was not a central zone. It was actually on a divisional basis. I had gone there and I was just reviewing the records and all those things. What had happened was I was auditing the it was in the year 2015-16 actually, and 2013-14 May there were actually a fraud which has got happened, and the case was going on. The company was fighting the case, and the contingent liability was accounted for, and the claims was actually progressing on the favor of the client. So this particular aspect was continuing for some years. I was an auditor or I was doing the audit for the next 3 years of that particular PSU, or I don't want to name the PSU, but this particular aspect of significance was continuing for a particular, or till the time I was there as an auditor. So audit documentation also provides those matters which are under significance on a continuous basis. For example, if there is a fraud which is happening, contingent liability, provisions, or something which is related to employee frauds, or something which is related to something which is on a continuous basis or a continuous audits, we need to have a cluster of data for that also. And last one, enabling the conduct of quality control reviews and inspection in accordance with SQC1. So SQC1, we all know standards of quality control. What is the quality, or what is the quality of the record that we need to understand? So enabling or increasing, or I should say even improvising the quality of the record, what we need to understand over this particular aspect. When it comes to a form, content or extent of how much we need to provide this documentation for this particular aspect, we need to understand how our documentation aspects, or our audit documentation, the quality of audit documentation is such that any previous auditor or any auditor that is coming after us should be able to easily understand. That's what it says. No previous connection with audit sufficient to enable experienced auditor to understand what has happened over the particular years. So nature, timing, or extent of audit procedure to comply with LAS, SAS and L&R, that is limited reviews. Results of audit procedures and audit evidence obtained, significant matters and conclusions thereon, and significant professional judgments with respect to conclusions. So based, let it be based on a generally we on a, if you are auditing gratuity or gratuity provision, or provision for gratuity, or provision for leave encashment, we generally rely upon something called as an experts report. That is a valuers report. Gratuity values report, wherein we understand that whatever has been provided by the valuer, we rely upon that and we try to this thing. So this particular audit documentation, a quality of audit documentation, or the best quality, I should say, which enables the subsequent auditor to easily understand. I would not say easily understand, to at least on a fair basis to understand about what is the results of audit procedures and audit evidence that has been obtained over the particular years. Audit file. We prepare something called as an, or I should say, this is very, very important, I should say. So audit file, we say it's called as, or critical file. We can even call it as a critical file. One or more folders or other storage in media, either in physical or electronic form, containing the record that comprise audit documentation for a specific engagement. So right from the start of the audit assignment, right from the start of the audit engagement, till the completion of the audit engagement, right from the start of the audit engagement till the completion of that particular engagement. So suppose, excuse me, right from the start of the audit engagement till the completion. Suppose if you're doing, if you are getting, or if your firm is getting appointed for the next 5 years or next 10 years of this particular engagement. So till from the start of the first year, till the end of the 10th year or 5th year, we need to have efficient audit evidence, and entire audit evidence or entire documentation should be part of something called as a audit file. Right from whatever audit evidence we have obtained in a particular year for a particular engagement to, or till, or for a particular year, should be forming part of something called as a critical file. Might be for a particular year, there might be some information, there might not be some information, or there might be in one year there might be some information, and another year there might not be an associated information about that, but does not matter. But whether for our certification, for our signing, whether we have obtained sufficient audit evidence of as part of audit documentation or not, will form part of the entire gamut of audit documentation called as audit file. Audit evidence, I repeat, audit evidence is the proof of what we have certified in the financial statements, or what we have signed in the financial statement. I would not say certify, I would say what we have signed as saying the true and fair view of the financial statements, audit evidence. Second, a combination of audit files is called as, or combination of audit evidences is called as audit documentation. And last but not the least, a combination of years of audit documentation taken to a particular file or taken to a mass file is called as audit file. Generally, any auditor office or any office for that matter, not only I'm saying auditor office, any office for that matter, they'll be having a lot of data in their kitty. Probably, sometimes it might be critical, sometimes it might not be critical, etc. So whatever it is, sometimes, so all these we take a general backup. So this particular backup is otherwise called as, if you are taking a backup for a particular engagement or on a whole or a master file, I can even call it as a master file. It's called as audit file or critical file. So within what time, sir? So audit engagement we are doing perfect. Everything is perfect, sir. Within what time should I do, sir? It varies based on the circumstances that every auditor might decide based on the auditor. So the issue over here is, sir, some assignments, or for example, let's take a limited review engagements. So we are doing this particular quarter, Jan to March quarter. We have to complete it within May 31st. That is within 60 days, or within May 30th we need to complete. So within that time we need to complete this particular called as critical file or audit file. So it might be, or he might create. The auditor might create. The third point is auditor might create something called as a completion index or completion memorandum post completion of the entire engagement. We might have a question, sir, whether this particular critical file or this particular audit file is to be done only after completion of engagement, or no sir, nothing like that. It's not to be done like that, but the critical file or audit file to be completed then and there, sir, then and there. So on the completion of engagement, prepare the critical file, prepare the audit file, put the repository of the entire information, whatever you have got as an audit evidence or as an audit documentation to the particular level. Next year, same process you are going through. Previous year information you are having, next year information you are having, next year information combined with both the information, create something called as an audit file or a critical. In the first year, audit file or audit documentation is going to be the same, but from the subsequent year onwards, audit file and critical file will be different from audit documentation. It might be much more bigger or much more complex to refer through and to easily understand, saying that yes, this particular year or this particular information associates with this particular year, and this particular year we need to understand. And last but not the least, I've already told you, an auditor, after considering everything or after considering all the information, can maintain something called as an index. Or generally we prepare, whenever we are writing an essay, we put it as an index of contents or contents of areas, etc. We do whatever, we call it as whatever it is. So in such case, we call it as this particular audit file, we call it as, or the front page or the cover page, we call it as an completion index or a completion memorandum. Undoubtedly, the ownership of audit documentation lies with the auditor. So every record, whatever you are obtaining as an audit evidence, as part of audit documentation, as part of or cluster of audit documentations, as part of audit files or critical files, the ownership lies with the auditor only. Standard of quality control provides, and unless otherwise specified by law or regulation, audit documentation is the property of the auditor only. Wherein sometimes, might not be always, sometimes our audit documentation to test our works, the court or the authorities or any person who is having that amount of authorization can take the ownership of our works. So unless otherwise provided under the law or regulation or by order, whatever it is called, the property of the audit documentation or the ownership of the audit documentation lies with auditor only. Likewise, ownership, the auditor at his discretion can make portions, extracts available to clients, provide such discretion which might not undermine the validity of the work performed. Very, very important is that, can an auditor share his audit documentation to the clients? That's the question over here. We already told you, audit documentation lies with the client, the auditor only. But can he share it with the clients, or can he share it with anybody? Yes, sir, to the extent what the auditor decides by himself. However, it need not, or whatever sharing should not undermine the validity of the work performed. And of course, when it comes to an assurance engagement, auditor assurance engagement, it should not affect the independence of the auditor or his personnel. So very, very important is, I can share it with my client or I can share it with anybody. For example, listed company audits, when we are doing, we cannot share it very easily, or we should not share it also, because we anyways, some companies, I would not say all the companies, some companies, they sign something called as NDA, that is non-disclosure agreement. So unless or until we get a NOC or we get a permission from the company themselves, we cannot share even our evidence, whatever we are doing. So though SA 230 states that we can share the files, but however, unless or until it does not undermine our validity, or it says that whatever work we have done, it's going to underpress it, or it's going to completely discourage it, etc. That might not be a valid one. And of course, if it affects the independence of the auditor, suppose if it goes to the company, or if it goes to any company personnel, and if it is get leaks by any company personnel, means it affects the independence of the auditor, and this particular assurance engagement at this point of time, ownership cannot be shared with anybody. So on a classic, coming to the critical part of our today's discussion is examples of audit documentation. So we understand that our as far as my professional practice is concerned, till 7 years of my post professional, or 8 years of my post profession, after getting my COP from 3 years, I have grouped it, or in fact, the best checklist which I have seen from my erstwhile works that I have done, from some amount of study that I have done over the years. I divide the total audit documentation into 4 types. One is engagement related. So what do you mean by engagement related? Very, very important is, what do you mean by engagement related? First and foremost, we need to understand, we need to prepare something called as a pre-engagement checklist. What does come under pre-engagement checklist? Just give me a minute. I'm just opening that file. Hope this is clear. Hope the screen sharing is clear to everybody. Is it clear? SIRC, DLH, SIRC, can you confirm, please?
What happened, sir?
Is it clear, sir? Is the file clear?
Yeah, it's clear, sir.
Okay. I shall increase the file. So here, before we even accept any assignment, we call it as pre-engagement checklist. So any company coming and seeking us to get engaged as an auditor, first we need to understand, as before even engaging ourselves as an auditor, we need to understand that we need to do something called as a background check of any company for that matter. So we need to start with this particular acceptance checklist. What is the nature of the company? Based on integrity issues with those charged with, have we come across any integrity issues? First and foremost, pre-engagement checklist. Any issues in we accepting this particular assignment? Pre-engagement checklist. For example, we might get into a discussion with a particular company management. They might not. What is the issue, or what is the issue that they are changing the auditors? Preferably, if it is on a rotation basis, it's not an issue. If it is on a rotation basis, wherein the company says that if it is on rotation basis from the through the provisions of Companies Act, it might not be a major issue. But if they are changing, or if they have removed the auditor, we need to understand what is the reason behind. So why are they doing something called as a removal of auditor, or why are they doing something called as a changing of auditor? On what basis they are doing the changing of auditor? First, we need to understand. So what is the client? What is the reputation of the management? Business practices, client litigation, any management litigations? Have they changed any banks, attorneys, auditors? Reason for change of auditors, if there is a change. Is there any criminal activity against the company, etc. First, we need to understand these questions, or these questions we need to understand by ourselves before even accepting the particular engagement. Before even accepting the engagement. And this particular aspect, our pre-engagement checklist, we need to start with first, if there is any issues on accounts. Is there any qualification in the previous auditor's report or any adverse note? So we, before even accepting an engagement, anyways, we will go through the entire company records. We will understand the entire company records. We will understand the sequence of what has happened over the years. If it is the first year, that does not matter. That does not matter that much. We need to understand the management. We need to understand the director's pulse, and we have to go through the line of activity of whether to accept the engagement or not. But when it comes to a subsequent auditor, or when it gets to appointment of a subsequent auditor, we need to do a complete background check as to whether we can accept the engagement or not. Third point is, a classic example is, whenever you are appointing an employee, we do something called a background check. Why are we doing, sir? Whether he has any criminal background, or whether he has any issues. Why has he changed jobs? Anyways, in the interview, we will ask him why has he changed jobs, what is the issue with the previous company, etc. We will ask him. But the same thing goes for this particular pre-engagement checklist also. And this should form part of the documentation. On what basis, sir? There should be and any document for that matter, there should be a maker checker concept. prepared by should be one person and reviewed by another person. Sir, is this engagement or is this checklist on a recurring basis? No, sir. You might ask me, sir, there is something called as an audit period. There is provided something called as an audit period. It's not it's audit period may be provided, may not be provided, sir. But if it is provided also, sometimes it might be for a one-time engagement. If it is for a recurring engagement, it need not be provided. Client name can be provided, prepared by one person and reviewed by another person. And prepared by whom, sir? It should be specifically or preferably prepared by a manager, and it should be reviewed by the person who is going to sign the financial statements. That's right. Yes, moving on to the next one, that is eligibility letter. So on what basis are we provide something called as an eligibility letter? What is the eligibility letter, sir? Wherein we declare that we firm of chartered accountants are eligible to get appointed as an auditor of particular company. We don't incur any disqualifications under section 141 of Companies Act 2013. We provide this declaration, and we also say that we don't have any moral offenses of moral turpitude. We have no partners of ours has been convicted of any offense, etc., etc. We provide a lot of declarations in this aspect, and in such case, we provide ourselves as to be one of eligible or to be appointed as chartered accountants for a particular company. This is one eligibility. This is the format of, I have a format, but this particular format is a very general one. Anybody can do, and I hope and I know every chartered accountant present here would be having that particular aspect or particular document. Third one, intimation of appointment. This should be received from the company. What is the intimation of appointment, sir? Let me open the attachment I have. Here it says, we would like to inform you, this is a particular or this is a declaration from the company saying that after getting our eligibility, we are getting an intimation or an appointment letter. Engagement letter is different, sir, and intimation of appointment is different, wherein it says that you have been appointed as a statutory auditor for this period till the conclusion of the next AGM. So where we provide our acceptance towards this particular to the company for getting this thing. So this should be signed by the director or a managing director or any authorized signatory of the your particular client. So moving on to the next one is engagement letter. Engagement letter, we all know, we have all seen it. We all know how. I don't need to explain anything. It is a standard format, or it is also even the format is even available on the Google. It's not, but the key point over here is, what are we trying to understand over here is, we need to understand that this particular engagement letter is to be form part. It's an integral part, and it should be there as part of our audit documentation. Many companies or many auditors, I would say, I'm not blaming our profession. It's not about being ignorant about the profession, but our auditors are devoid of this particular engagement letters. Many of our general auditors, I would say, even I have seen many auditors in my neighboring areas, as well as in my in my peers in my age itself, they fail to get this particular engagement letter because of urgency, because of hastefulness, because of any somehow get the audit or somehow get the client into their kitty. So they fail on this something called as audit documentation. So which needs to get corrected, and every chartered accountant present here, as well as, please go and tell your this thing, or please go and tell your peers that please have any assignment that they are undertaking, be it need not be only statutory audits, general audits, or only audits. Be it any assignment, be it due diligence, be it investigation, be it financial audits, or whatever type of assignments that we are undergoing. First, we need to understand that we need to obtain something called as an audit engagement letter. So if the engagement letter is there, definitely we have a supporting we have a say saying that, or we have a say, yes, that this company is having some relationship with us as an auditor, as a consultant, as anybody who are authorized to do that particular work. Next aspect, moving on to the next aspect, which says NOC from the previous auditor, NOC request from the previous auditor. Many auditors, again, in this aspect also, many auditors fail. On what basis, sir? Just to get the haste, just out of haste, just out of getting the client to their kitty, they don't request any NOC from the previous auditor. In fact, this is given as per our standards provided by our ICAI, but still we don't get the NOC from our previous auditor. Sometimes, few of my peers, they have themselves told that they have filed disciplinary action against another auditor who has not got an NOC from us, etc. And all they have done. So let us not push ourselves into anything which is coming as particular thing. So hence we would, let's safeguard ourselves to have it from a proper audit documentation in case of this particular NOC. So two things we are in the chartered accountants are failing, wherein engagement letter, obtaining an engagement letter from the client, and at last obtaining an NOC or no objection certificate from the previous auditor, who has already done the audit. And last one, it's called as permanent audit file checklist. So I'm just opening this particular this thing, just a minute. So here, this particular audit file, I have taken it from Bombay Chartered Accountants Security Journal. So it was recommended by them. And permanent audit file checklist for contents. What is a business? What is a background? What business means? What is the nature of the business? What is their memorandum articles? What is their sales volumes, etc. Main customers. Background. What is the registered office? Who are their main directors? Any other group companies are there, internal control systems, contracts, agreements, everything needs to be arranged over here. This particular aspect or this particular file will be a permanent audit file, which will not undergo any change unless or until if there is a change in the contents over here. For example, so if there is a PAN change, if there is a name change, then there will be a change in this particular audit file. Otherwise, there will not be any changes in that particular file. So this is called, that's why it is called as permanent audit file. So likewise, if there is a change in the capital, yes, there will be some changes. So accounting information, list of books of accounts maintained, what is the software which is maintained, accounts and audit, communication with the retiring auditor. So all these checklists, if we are able to answer, this will form part of something called as permanent audit file checklist. And this will stay, or this will speak for years to come. If we are able to copy this, or if you are able to answer this particular questions, whatever we are giving you over here as part of our permanent audit file checklist, it would speak for volumes to come as we progress. Again, this particular document is also should be prepared by a manager, or in the capacity of, when it goes to any big four firms or something, there are a lot of levels of guys who are working over there. So it starts from partner, after that director, after that manager, and then it goes to assistant manager, then after that goes to executives, after that it goes to articles. So preferably, if you are thinking it that way, so prepared by should be by a manager, assistant manager, or even by a director, if it is at the KPMG level, or if it is at the big four level, or if it comes to the next level of firms, it can be prepared by a manager, and it should be reviewed by a proper, and it should be reviewed and signed. It should not be just reviewed, not only reviewed by, it should also get signed by a particular partner. This particular, as I told you, as I repeat this point, this particular permanent audit file will not undergo a change as the audit engagement proceeds. Moving on to the next. Moving on to the next aspect of next step of the audit documentation, that now we have all understood, or we have all obtained the documents. Let's say we are going to do all attendees over here, and all of us are partners in a particular firm or in a particular CA firm, and we are all going to audit a particular company. It's a very big company, PSU, etc. Let's imagine whatever situation we are undergoing through over here. So we have obtained all the checklist, whatever it has been given over here based on the engagement. Engagement related pre-engagement checklist is done. It has been prepared by the manager and it has been approved by a partner. Eligibility letter we have submitted to the company. Appointment letter, appointment intimation of appointment we received it from the company. Engagement letter we have provided to the company and we have signed it. NOC has been given by the NOC request has been given to the another auditor and they have given a clearance, and permanent audit file checklist is done and it is going to get continued for the years to come. Next thing that we are going to understand is how we are going to perform the audit procedures. So we call it as audit strategy planning memorandum. So here it starts with a continuous checklist. So what do you mean by continuous checklist, sir? It is more applicable for not with the first year audits, but for the subsequent audits. See, last year you have done the audit. Now this year again you are going to carry on the same thing. So any other hindrance to the continuing data that we are going to that we already have. For example, permanent audit file we said a lot of business related information, management related information, group related information, and financial related information, statutory related information. Many information came into that particular picture as we witnessed through the checklist that we already had. So continuous checklist says if there is any change, provide the information over here. Of course, update the audit file also, permanent audit file also, but we need to have a trail of changes that we need to understand. So what is this thing or audit strategy? What are some points or what is this thing we need to have over here? So over here, we start with something called as continuous checklist, which says, do we have the experience, knowledge, and resources to service the client? So suppose last year the client was very big, so we engaged around 7 people. Now this year, all my articles have gone, or I had only 20 articles, all my articles have gone, all my team has gone. So what am I going to do? Do we have the experience or knowledge and resources to service them? Experience and knowledge might be there, whether we have the resources to do. All chartered accountants cannot sit and do everything over here. So whether we have the sufficient resources to take care of the client's interest. In case the first year audit we have done, and we had a lot of difference of opinion with the management, difference of opinion with the directors, difference of opinion with the executive levels and foreman level, whatever it is called, whatever we have it called. So if there is any doubt in the integrity of the personnel of the management, whether there is any, first of all, has there been limitation of the scope of audit and nature of evidence that has resulted in a qualified? So suppose if we are given a qualified audit report in the previous year, or any adverse report or any disclaimer of matters paragraph, whether the particular aspect has been continuing, because that would be the first one, because we see opening balances, we see something called as verification of opening balances. So when we see the verification of opening balances, whether the same limitation or whatever due to which we have given an adverse, or due to which we have given emphasis on matters disclaimer, or due to which we have given a qualified opinion, whether it continues to this year also. This particular call, sir, okay sir, everything is fine, everything we have answered all the questions over here, everything we have done. At the end of the day, we say that if everything is favorable, if everything is, say, let's say last year there was one thing, last year there was an issue, this year it has got sorted, no problem, sir. Last year there was no issue, this year also there is no issue, no problem, sir. But last year there is an issue, this year also there is an issue. What call that we can take, sir? The call has to be taken by the auditor, whether to continue the audit or not, sir. So this particular continuous checklist provides a break on the taking up the engagement on that particular year. This is one thing. Sir. Second point. Again, second aspect that we need to understand is business undertaking for audit planning. So what is a business undertaking? Understanding the business. Again, this is more applicable for a fresh audits. So how am I going to understand the audit? What is the basis on which we're going to understand the audit? Let's see what does this thing say. Describe the client's business and industry in detail. First of all, we need to understand what is the client's business. So here we need to understand what is the client, what are the major products of the client, what are the major customers, activities relating to what, in what all locations it is operating, what are the main activities, major brands, sales mix, geographical spread, credit ratings, etc. About key shareholders, what are the key shareholding pattern, whether it is a percentage, whether there is any changes in the shareholding or something over here. This is more, again I said, this is more relating to something which is on a fresh audit. If you are starting at the initial audit, or if you are starting as a first audit of a company on a fresh basis, this particular checklist would be applicable. This all checklist, it's after accepting the engagement. After accepting the engagement, these all things will come into the picture. Pertinent management, pertinent information about key managerial personnel and functional heads. What is the name of the employee, designation, whether they're managing director, independent directors, functional directors, whatever committee directors, whatever we are calling, years with the entity, how many years they have been staying with this particular organization, everything will form part of the information about the members of the board of directors, etc. will be forming part of this particular aspect. So this again, this you can even understand, sir. What is the objective of maintaining this much amount of information in this particular aspect? You can understand. So here the issue over here is, unless or until you understand the background of the business, you might not be able to devise what procedures of audit that we are going to perform, sir. So this information is key. What is the key, sir? Again, this information will be forming part of permanent audit file, unless or until if there is a change in this particular aspect. Majorly the business mix or business related main products, major plans might not be having a might not be having a change. But suppose if there is a change, in the credit rating, so we need to mention it on a year-on-year basis. We need to update this particular document, sir. Next one is audit strategy planning memorandum. What do you mean by audit strategy planning memorandum? This mainly devises how are we going to do the particular audit. As I told you, who is going to do what area. Suppose I have A, B, C, 3 people are working for me. So A is going to do a particular task, or I'm going to give him a particular area of audit. Let's say I'm going to give him P&L items that he needs to do audit of entire P&L. He needs to prepare the entire working paper of P&L, and he needs to take up the process of completion of working paper of all the P&L items. B will take care of entire balance sheet items. C will take care of the entire schedules to P&L, as well as, or in short, he will take care of the preparation of the financial statements. So we need to understand on what basis, based on the information that we are having from continuous checklist and after the business information, we need to devise the tasks, or we need to provide the task to respect to people as to what is the timeline for completion, as well as who is going to do what. So some exhaustive points over here which I wanted to tell you. So this aspect here, when we understand, it's called as scope and description of the engagement, tax audit, etc. Whatever this thing over here, list down the other services. What are the other services that we are providing? If it is other services, we need to come out of the services. Say section 144 states few services, or some of the services the statutory auditor cannot provide. What are the services, sir? Internal audit, management consultancy, management bookkeeping services, portfolio management services, investment planning services, etc. This may not be. If those services are being provided over here, it has to get reflected, and then it has to be, what is the impact on the audit? It needs to be this thing. So list of entities to be audited. What all the entities to be audited over here? So knowledge of business, everything we are giving over here. And last one, indicate significant audit areas. So who is going to do what? Cash? Yes, if it is a significant audit area. So what is the reason? What is the reason behind? So what is the findings of the previous auditor that we need to get incorporated over here? So that is the point of few of us have asked that to please upload the files in the chat and this thing doing fresh audit and to share the documents in the chat box. I'll definitely do. Just give me some time. Let me complete the session. After that, I will do. Thank you so much for your cooperation. So if we just scroll down, if you just scroll down and see plan for significant audit areas. So suppose if they say, I'm just giving it over here as a respect to or a sample area. Revenue recognition, risk of material misstatement due to fraud relating to revenue recognition. It says occurrence, accuracy, and cutoff. So suppose today as on 31st March, the particular company has provided the services, but it has not got reflected in the statutory returns. How will you be able to this thing, sir? How will you be able to certify that figure, sir? Based on what, sir? Based on the availability of records, based on the accounting policy adherence. You can keep it as an unbilled revenue. Likewise, moving on to the next one, inventory. Risk that the inventory as of the balance sheet date does not exist. So inventory they might have specified over there, but let's say if the inventory does not even exist. Very on a practical note, I should say, on a practical thing, I should say, many of the many of the auditors, I should not say chartered accountants, because the in tier 2 cities, even the ITPs or income tax practitioners, GST practitioners call themselves as auditors. They go and get themselves signed or get the report signed by another chartered accountant, wherein they say all the information is perfect, all the information is pakka, all the information they reflected in the 3CB 3CD, and they say every information is true and correct, but without knowing what is the risk behind as to behind this. So plan to perform, how would I know, sir, whether the particular stock is there or not? On the basis of as on 31st March, I should do cash verification. Also, I should do physical verification of that particular stocks. Recording of variances. So suppose books says around 10 stocks are there. As per books, 10 stocks are there. But as per real on a physical application basis, only one stock is there. Rest of the 9 stocks, where it has gone, we need to arrive at the variance, we need to compile that with the variance, and we need to understand what is the difference between them. So how are we going to plan? So how are we going to plan for those significant areas? So we have devised the significant areas over here, but how are we going to arrive at the significant areas, and what is the planned steps over here? And last but not the least, arrive at the materiality planning. So here materiality planning is based on the professional judgment of the auditor. It need not be 1% benchmark. It might be even 0.01% of the entire turnover. Does not matter. So any auditor can take a professional judgment as to what he is going to see, how he is going to perform the audit procedures, and at last but not the least, how he is going to perform or how he is going to arrive at certain conclusions during this particular audit. And last, discussion with the client. What is the client pulse of the client? Suppose if on a fair note, we are accepting the engagement, we are just going through the background of the entire company, and we are arriving at certain reservations from our side. It says we are preliminary analytical review to be done by an auditor. So discussion with the client, where we, on the basis of analytical review, we have certain reservations to be discussed with the client on certain documents or on certain conclusions that we are saying it over here. So in such case, we need to discuss with management and we need to know what is their pulse. In case if we have such reservations, probably management might be having a better reason to sort out that reservation. So significant events, suppose as I told you just a few years before, I was doing an audit of an PSU. They had encountered a fraud case. So significant events and unusual transactions. This fraud, this is a classic example of an unusual transaction. These things needs to be coming into this particular checklist. Internal control, risk and materiality, all these will be coming under this particular aspect. So as we go down through control environment, risk assessment, etc., everything we come and we do over here. And at the 12th part, if you can see, timing and nature of work. Estimated date of start of audit, what date at start, and how are we going to complete. Suppose if it is a very big company, let's say the company is making around 1,000 crores, 1,500 crores, and we need to do an audit for that. We need to divide ourselves. We can't do everything on one shot. But At the same time, we need to understand that it's all matter of the final or interim audit. We can arrive at certain conclusions, and final audit, we can arrive at certain conclusions. So all these things are over here, given over here. Next one, very, very important, is entity level risk assessment. What do you mean by entity level risk assessment, sir? We can very safely say I'm very sorry. So entity level risk assessment says what are the risk factors that a particular company is facing. We need to understand, because major accounting concept or major accounting policy, or we are certifying, or that we are doing, or we are giving, is the company is going to be a going concern basis, or company is done on a going concern basis. What do you mean by going concern, sir? This particular company is going to continue its operations for the next few years or next year also, because on what basis, sir? Based on the situation what we are going through. So what is the, on what basis going concern means? Next, we are giving an assurance that it will continue for the next year. What is the risk that is facing, sir? What is the risk that we are trying to understand over here? Before even we certify that, we need to understand what is the risk over here. So just a few exhaustive checklists I am opening. So this particular aspect provides assessment of entity level risk. So if there is a major change to products, why have they changed the products? See, suppose, let's say a particular company is into oil business, and they have been doing very good at that oil. In that oil, they are making around 300 to 400 crores turnover they're making, and now they are suddenly changing it to, from oil, they're changing it to some other products. Why have they changed it? Immediately, that too on a sudden basis, why have they changed? Are there any major changes in the industry and technology? So suppose on a previously, on a few years back, or I should say even 20 years back, the mobiles were very, very hard. But right now, or it was all enabled with buttons. But right now, not even a single mobile, or I should say majority of ours, a majority of our population is having only smartphones. So over the years, the industry has migrated itself from button phones to smartphones. So is there any changes? This is all on a year-on-year basis. Is there any changes that has happened in the industry and technology? Is all affecting the industry, or is this all being affected through a technology? But is there a fraud in this activity or not? We need to understand. Is there a significant decline in the demand for existing products or services? Suppose if you take it, this particular point is very, very relevant in the last few years because of the advent of COVID. Many products demand came down. Many products supply was up, but demand significantly came down. Because of what, sir? Because of this global crisis called as COVID-19. Is there any significant expansion? So suppose if there is a decline, we need to understand what is the reason behind the decline. We cannot always equate to say, sir, one industry which was not at all affected was actually agriculture business. So suppose tomorrow they come and say agriculture business has come down. We cannot accept, or sometimes we may not be able to accept unless or otherwise there is a particular specific reason behind whatever we are saying. Next one, to understand is there specific significant expansion in the business? So suppose if there is a software company, they have obtained some other healthcare company. Why have they done that, sir? Understanding the business expansion mode, etc. Why have they done that, sir? So we need to understand this point. Is there any inadequacy of working capital or problems, geographically diverse locations? So all these points, all these issues, or all these points needs to be, or all these pointers needs to get answered first and foremost. Most important is if there is internally, if there is any change in the management. Most important. Let's say a managing director has been taking over the organization or handling the organization for the past few years. Suddenly it has got changed to another person. Why has it got changed? Unless or until, let's say, if there is a retirement aspect, or if it is a this thing aspect, yes, it is accepted. The manager has retired, or the managing director has retired, another managing director has come in. Yes, okay, it is accepted. But if that particular managing director has been removed and the other managing director has come in, then there is a possible reason, or then there is a pertinent reason that we need to consider as part of this particular documentation. So what is this documentation, sir? Entity level risk assessment provides even an internal change in the management should be some point of concern. Even it can be even go to the extent of whether there is any risk of fraud or not in this particular aspect. Again, when there is any changes in the group structure, group capital structure, suppose if there is a debt, it has got increased, or suppose if there is a gradual increase in the entire loan capital, we need to understand why have they taken so much loans. So why have they taken so much loans? So that we need to understand what kind of difficulty they are undergoing. So much of loans means so much of difficulty in the business. So much of difficulty in the business means there is a possible concern, ongoing concern of the business. So that likewise, financial reporting on a general basis, risk management policy, whistleblower policy, results of operations, etc. We need to understand, or we need to consider this checklist or entity level risk assessment. On a whole, I should say, entity level risk assessment provides us saying that what are the risks being faced by the particular company in their business, or possible risk or potential risk that they might face. Or we generally understand when we are doing an audit procedure, we take up around three types of risk: detective risk, inherent risk, coherent risk. So we understand that these all risks are inherent in nature with the company. How are we going to face that when we are going to perform the audit procedures? Again, this particular audit document is also to be prepared by and reviewed by a manager as well as a partner under this thing. And last one, fraud risk assessment. Is there a fraud? Typical question. The first question that comes into our minds is there a fraud? First of all. So if there is a fraud, what kind of fraud that has happened in the years? So what is the management reaction? What is the management's views in this particular aspect? What is the management's treatment in this particular aspect? As I told you, anything which is the PSU had undergone a fraud issue, so they had filed a particular case. They have been moving it to a lawyer. They have been moved to a high court. They had taken it to IRDA, etc. Everything they had done, and they had taken it to a whole new level. So everything, we were comfortable taking up the documents, seeing the documents. We were comfortable. Yes, the management has taken sufficient steps to address all the frauds which is happening in the organization. The fraud has happened, but subsequently they have made all kinds of precautions, or they have made internal systems very, very stringent to make sure that these kind of fraudulent transactions do not happen. So we need to understand what is the fraud that has happened. If there is a fraud, or if there is any internal system lapse or potential lapse, or any other internal control systems which has a potential threat to the organization, or which might lead to a potential fraud in the organization, we need to understand. Of course, we have our fraud reporting, etc. Everything we have all seen in this thing. So overall conclusion, what is the auditor's responsibility? So SR 240 says that auditor's responsibility to fraud and audit of financial statements. What has the auditor done before in the previous year? What is our responsibility in the current year? And how are we going to do that in this current year as well? And last but not the least, risk of material misstatement. So conditions that may indicate risk of material misstatement is, what are the, again, entity level risk we have understood, fraud level risk we have understood, and at the last thing, we need to understand what are the material misstatements that it has happened over the years. That's very, very one question which I wanted to highlight over here. Does the entity have operations in regions that are economically unstable? Let's say as of now, today's news, Nigeria, they have gone into something called as a process of demonetization. So they have struck down the old notes. So whether the company is having any operations over there, so if it is going to go there, the country is actually facing a huge cash crisis today. So whether the company is having any branches over there, or whether the company is having any operations over there, we need to understand. We need to see how this particular cash crisis is going to significantly impact our particular company. So tomorrow cash is not available. We are not going to able to, we are not be able to pay to the, our employees. How are we going to use, or how are we going to deal with this particular situation? We need to understand through risk of material misstatements. So volatile markets, etc., all these things we need to understand, or we need to see, and we need to arrive at an overall conclusion. Yes, there are no major risk of material misstatement. Even if it is there, it is not material enough to be considered under the reporting process. This is with regard to audit strategy planning memorandum. Moving on to the third aspect, this preferably many taking up this particular documentation, or third level of documentation, that is dealing with audit and reporting, will be coming under only when we are actually performing the audit, or when we are actually dealing, or when we are actually performing the, or gathering the audit evidence. So first always starts with audit evidence, starts with the financial figures, financial statements, and its audit report, and its subsequent audit report. So all the working papers, let's say sales, purchases, cost of materials consumed, changes in inventories, etc., whatever we are reporting under the financial statements, let it be current liabilities, short-term borrowings, long-term borrowings, tangible assets, intangible assets, etc., whatever it is, everything should be having a separate working paper, I suggest. And of course, work papers as assurance for all the functional figures in financial statements and the final submissions. Final submissions is what, sir? The audit report that we are giving it to the management in our letterhead. So audit report, the one word, the supporting for this one word is the whole set of audit documentation that we are having in the previous two sections that we've seen previously. So financial statements and audit report, first we need to understand. So financial statements starts with the first schedule of share capital, work paper for share capital, work paper for reserves and surplus, work paper for work paper for next set, that is equity and liabilities. Next set is long-term non-current liabilities, which deals with long-term borrowings, money, unsecured loans, any other giving and taking with the related parties. Next, coming to current liabilities, trade payables, short-term borrowings, deferred, before even non-current liabilities, we have deferred tax liabilities, etc. So all these will be coming, everything, each and every figure is to be supported through a work paper, or is to be supported through a separate work paper preferably. So it is not, the format which I have might not be a standard format, or even though whatever we have given here also might not be a standard format, but we can have, or we can devise our own working paper in this particular figure. But preferably my suggestion would be to take, or to have a work paper for each and every aspect of financial statements. Second point is accounting standards checklist, wherein it might be, or we relate to the Ind AS checklist also. So Ind AS we have around 32 to 33 Ind AS, like accounting standards also we have around 32, out of which few accounting standards are not there. So for each and every checklist, there is a separate checklist which I will be sharing it in the chat box, which we can use it, and we can take it to the next level of this thing. Likewise, we have it for standards of auditing. Each and every standards of auditing will have a separate checklist, and every question in the checklist is to be answered after the performance of the procedures. And last, but moving on to the fourth point is IFC checklist, whether internal financial controls, IFC disclosures, internal financial controls disclosures. We give the audit report, right? Annexure A, B, C, etc. Annexure A, B, we give that, whether the internal financial controls of a particular company is proper or not, we give that, we give a certification. Wherein, how are we comfortable based on something called as a working paper. So next one is most important. Of course, I'm not saying others are not important, but extracts of minutes of meeting with client as well as off clients. So during the period, the company would have had a lot of board meetings, general meetings, would have passed a lot of resolutions, would have submitted forms to ROC, etc. They would have done a lot of aspects. They would have met a number of times. But how are we comfortable with what decisions they have taken? Because the decisions that they have taken is going to be the reflection of the financials, and that reflection is to be supported by a proper minutes of meeting with us. Next one, taxation workings. We all know how to do a taxation working based on 44AB, based on nature of allowances, disallowances, provide everything, calculation of MAT, everything we know, and that particular work paper also need to be specifically prepared. Because why are we preparing that, sir? Because we are doing something called as a deferred tax asset or liability. Based on what, sir? Timing difference and permanent differences based on what we are preparing under taxation work paper. And contingent liability, we are giving a separate contingent liability. Why are we giving, sir? Because this is going to, not now, but this is going to potentially affect the organization's financials, and hence we are giving something called as a contingent liability. So my suggestion is that financial statements, let it be financial statements, let it be AS, let it be SA, let it be IFC, everything needs to be addressed by a separate work paper. You can even have a separate Word document also. It might not be a oral basis, or it might not be a this thing. So everything needs to be addressed by a separate Word document. Next one, audit issues observed and resolved. Most important, sir. Why are we saying this audit issue? See, the professional judgment between an auditor and an organization might be different. As an auditor, we might think something. As a management, they might be in a completely different situation. So they might have accounted for entries in a particular manner. We might say that it is not to be done in this manner, it is to be done in another manner. So how are we resolving all these issues with them? For example, let's say there is a particular, I'm taking another point over here. An internal auditor has given some points in his internal audit report which could potentially affect our statutory audit report or statutory audit opinion. This particular aspect needs to be discussed with the management. This is one of the issues that we need to observe, and we need to resolve it with the management. Sir, should all the questions or should all the issues be discussed? Yes, sir, it should be discussed. Should all be only resolved should form part of working paper or not? No, sir. All, even the unresolved should also be part of the documentation. Could also be part of the documentation. However, if it is unresolved, it should form part of your audit report also, because it is significantly affecting your opinion on the financial statements. If it is unresolved, and if you're still giving an unqualified report, the authorities might question your, it might be at a stage where your integrity is questioned. You have unresolved an issue, or you have not resolved a particular issue, but still you have given an unqualified opinion, means you have been working on the favor of the management, and your integrity is definitely, or independence is definitely questionable. And next one, minutes of meeting with client. So audit issues observed and resolved. This is audit issues observed and resolved. We have given it over here, but other factors of audit, how are we going to understand it? So there is no specific format over here. So minutes of meeting with client is not. There is no specific format. Whatever we do or whatever we discuss with the management, generally how we prepare minutes, that's going to be the format for this thing. And last but not the least, even the internal review with partners and internal review with audit team is going to be a part of our audit documentation. What has the partners suggested? What has the partners incorporated in the fresh in the financials, apart from what we have audit documented? And last but not the least, what is the conclusion that we have obtained from the review with partners as well as with the directors, managers, whatever we call it as. And last but not the least, last stage, or I would say last category of documentation, I would not say last stage, but last category of documentation is external confirmations and communication, which forms part of bank debtors and creditors, bank deposits confirmation, loan confirmation, gratuity and leave encashment report, relying on the another experts report, valuation report, any of the reports given by experts, internal audit reports, other reports or other documentation as necessary for documentation and audit purpose. So any kind of communication with anybody, it can be any person, which forms part of, or which integrally forms part of our opinion, should form part of the fourth stage or fourth category of audit documentation. In case of a limited review, generally limited review, we sign, or we generally provide our opinion that the true and fair view of the interim financial statements, or even for this might be majorly applicable only for a listed company. But if it is for an unlisted company, they need to follow something called as SA 2410, 2410, 2400 in case of this thing. What is it? Interim financial statements audit. So how are we going to audit document? That same procedure is going to get followed, but in compliance, SA 230 as well as SA 240, all kinds of audit review, all kinds of standards of auditing, including SA 230, should be in compliance with standards of review engagements also. So how are we going to do, sir? In relevance to the legal and regulatory requirements, we need to adhere to the documentation part and we need to complete. This with regard to our audit documentation for corporates. So I can very well say this particular format might not be an exhaustive format or might not be the best format, I would say, but to some extent we can say that definitely this whatever checklist that we have seen till now, or whatever contents of checklist that we have seen till now, might be a hand in hand for all of us and to take it up for the next level. We can all say, sir, have we all covered the amendments towards this audit documentation? If you ask me, sir, audit documentation for financial year 23-24, it's going to be a standard one for all the years, whatever it is. So hence the audit documentation might change or will change as the law changes or as the aspects changes with time to time. So hence we need to update our documentation and update our critical or audit file as the time passes or as the economy changes. So any questions, any doubts, please, you can ask me. Somebody has asked resourceful presentation and I was not able to understand how this is specific to financial year 23-24 as per the title of the program. Madam, I already madam or sir, whoever it is, I had specified in the towards the end of the program that this thing, whatever I have given it over here or whatever I have shared it over here, it's a general one. It's not specific to this particular year or to this particular thing, but this is a format which can be even used for any number of years that is going to come. So that can be taken. There is any other questions, you can ask me. We'll share the formats, madam. I will share the formats with our chat box, or I will share the formats through the SIRC to all the. There's any other questions, I'm ready to answer. Any other questions? Any audit software which is available, which will enable SMEs to document. I'm not able to get the question, madam. I'm sorry. It says enable SMEs to document. I don't understand. Can you be a bit clear, please? Thank you. For small firms to document, madam. This the audit format or audit checklist that I have given you. It's not restricted only to a big four, or it's not restricted only to a particular firm or big five or something like that. It can be used even by a proprietor auditor also. It can be used even by a small auditor also. It is a standard format which can be used by any auditor that I'm doing. But as far as software is concerned, I don't have any as of now, ma'am. But definitely I will check it up and share it if there is anything, if there is any scope. If I only maintain the list of audit conclusions, will it be sufficient? Yes, madam, you can maintain the list of conclusions, but please have a backup for what conclusions you have maintained, please. Because even an audit report is also one of the conclusions that we are arriving at. So on basis of audit report, what is the backup for that audit report, or what is the basis of that audit conclusion? You need all kinds of backup. So only maintaining the conclusions may not suffice the purpose, but maintaining the backup for such conclusions should also be there. The standard says if an experienced auditor can understand that the work has been done, unless I do the work, how audit conclusions possible? Yes, madam. So if you are saying that standard says if an experienced auditor can understand that the work has been done, unless I do the work, how audit conclusions is possible? I didn't say that only audit conclusions to be done, ma'am. You need to maintain some backup for the audit conclusion. So our backup automatically means that you need to maintain all the documents that supports your conclusions. So I meant that every documentation, audit conclusions, only having audit conclusions may not be sufficient one. You should have the entire audit documentation for arriving at the audit conclusion segment. As I told in the beginning of the session, if you don't do the work, or if you don't document the work, it's very similar or very equal to you're not having done. Just documenting only the conclusions may not be a sufficient work that we have done. You need to have a definite background of how we have, or a definite document for the work that we have arrived at, or definite document for the work you have done for arriving at the conclusions behind. So unless you have that, it's not possible. Mr. Sandeep sir, I think the question is audit fees charged or statutory audit fees is charged is fee charged for other service. If it is less than, will there be any professional misconduct? Sir, I think you need to consult the faculty who is going to take this thing. As far as in my small knowledge or small brain is concerned, I don't think so there is any offense, because in my area, in my city, I have seen statutory audit, or I have seen people who are doing statutory audit or company statutory audit for just 5,000 rupees, whereas they are doing other assignments for around 10,000, 15,000 rupees. So I don't see any professional misconduct, but of course, this is just my opinion. That too restricted to my small knowledge is concerned. Please check with the respective faculty or respective institute. Actually, I would say you can refer it to the institute for this particular aspect. Any other questions? There is anything, please you can ask. Thank you, madam. Thank you so much, Gauri madam. Thank you. Sir, preferably yes. Mr. Sandeep sir, you have asked me that, sir, do we need to prepare schedules for all the line items of balance sheet and profit and loss account as you highlighted during presentation? Preferably yes, sir. Please do prepare, because we are certifying, sir. We are certifying the figures in the financial statements. Even if it is 1 rupee also, we are certifying it. So preparing a separate work paper will not take, I would say, even if it takes much time also, it will serve the purpose in the future. I would suggest you to even do that for even the smallest figure if it is there in the financial statement. In fact, I would say even if it is not forming part of financial statements, if it is forming part of your notes, for that also, if you can have a separate presentation or separate work paper, separate schedules, not schedule, separate work paper, it should be it should suffice the purpose. Primarily responsibility for producing the schedules is with management, but many times many management does not do it. It's perfectly correct, madam, Gauri madam. You're perfect on that. Yes, it is not being prepared by the management. I mean, it is given by the input is given by the management, but at the end of the day, the work paper is only done by us, or the schedule is only prepared by us. You are correct only. But few management or few companies, or I would say the sophisticated companies or the companies which are situated in the tier 1 areas, they are they have in their in-house itself, they have chartered accountants, or they have good amount of finance people who are updated with the relevant acts. So hence if it comes to tier 2 or tier 3 cities, what you're saying is right, but tier 1 cities, majority the management themselves prepare and provide us the schedules, I mean say. Of course, we don't sign the schedules just like that. We prepare the schedules. I mean, we audit the schedules. We prepare our own work paper based on the schedules. After that, only we sign. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sandeep, sir. Thank you so much for your comment. I'll try to do it through SIRC, ma'am, or sir or ma'am, whoever it is. I'll try to route it through SIRC. You can get the checklist from there. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Raghav, sir. There are no more questions. If there is any questions, please you can go ahead. Otherwise, I will respect the SIRC to take up the